Welcome to BESPOKEN, the podcast that explores the world of independent music and physical media culture. I'm Scott Pollack, your host and the president of A to Z Media. Today, our guest is the one and only Billy Fields of the Warner Music Group. Billy graciously shared his industry insight into a wide range of topics, including the resurgence of the vinyl format, the current sales landscape, and the efforts that the Warner Music Group has devoted to sustainability, including PET vinyl. He concluded the conversation with his thoughts on the future of the format. We hope you enjoy this conversation, and if you like what you hear, please subscribe to our podcast. Billy, thank you so much for coming down to our office.
I needed to see the new digs. Obviously, I haven't been here in so long. It's lovely to be here.
So you are often considered and touted as Warner's vinyl guy. Would you say that's a fair app?
Sure. Yeah. I call myself Warner's vinyl expert, or varying degrees of terms that touch against that. But yeah, I'm the vinyl guy, the vinyl dude, the vinyl whatever.
How did that happen? How did you come to be this massive corporation with such a storied histories, modern day vinyl dude?
If I cut the story really short, I just made it up, just like the position. If I lengthen the story out, I was working in California for WEA at the time, was promoted to do a national sales gig back in New York. So I moved back here in 2003. And then about 2005, early 2006, I think I did the thing that a lot of people do in their careers, which is you sort of like, what am I doing? I'm not digging these records I'm pushing. I want to do something else that's more meaningful. And luckily at the time, the guys that were running WEA, John Esposito and Matt Signori, said, cool, we just picked up Ryko Disc and Ryko Distribution. We're going to send you down to Ryko Disc to help them run the label. I don't know how much I actually helped, to be quite honest. I mean, I think that that's where I met Stacy for the very first time, in fact. I learned a lot, and it was incredibly difficult couple of years. And at the end of those couple of years, I had some greater sort of life weight on my back and said, hey guys, I mean, if you can get me out of here, I don't think I can keep doing both things, my personal life and my work life, and having a balance that is going to keep me sane. And they were lovely and really wonderful guys. And they said, okay, cool, we'll get a spot for you. And so the spot they got for me was come back and make sense of the vinyl business. And this was in 2008.
2008. Where was the vinyl industry at that time?
2007, the US market sold 994,000 records for the entire year. In 2008, it doubled. So 1.4 million units. We do that on Record Store Day week now. This year, we're going to be north of 49 million records sold in the US. So it was in its nascent rise, I suppose you could call it.
But you were starting, or people were starting to see this sort of building very gradually.
For sure. And I have to be very clear and honest about this. Like I came back in the center at WEA at the time. We're called WEA, then we're called WMX now, to help our company make some sense around it. So worked with the people that were already doing the work. So Rhino had been reissuing records, obviously. There are a lot of records that had been issued in the early 2000s all the way up to that point. And then a guy over at Warner Brothers Records, Tom Berry, also known as Grover, a guy you should have on your podcast, by the way. And I say this whenever I see him, and I say this whenever I have an opportunity, like, we would not be sitting here today having this conversation if it wasn't for his work, because he actually got the major labels to get back into it seriously. And he had hired a guy at the time. His name is Jeff Bowers. He used to work at Bill Smith Custom and Classic in LA, brought him over. And those two guys really drove the internal engine at the Warner Music Group by way of Warner Brothers Record. But I came into the center to try to make sense out of all of it for all of us. And then to work with everybody to try to, best practice pricing strategy around how do we hit the market. I honestly just got super lucky. I got to go visit plants. I got to meet people that run plants. Got to meet people that are making jackets and doing mastering and all those things. And so from 2008 to the present, although my overall remit has changed pretty dramatically, I do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
That's still at the core of what I do. I'm going to guess at this point, I've probably been in more pressing plants than anybody else in my company. I've probably met more individual mastering engineers than all the people in my company, just because they're not positioned in a way to do that. So I go to trips, I go on travel to places for conferences, and there's a plant, let's go check it out, right? So I just gather all this, in the end, like useless information, really. I mean, if I can't take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah.
But my head is just full of all sorts of stuff. And I've learned all the detail of making a record without actually having to do all the detail of making a record.
That's what I was going to ask. I mean, really,
Yeah.
you're not directly, and correct me if I'm wrong here,
Yeah.
in the production department.
No, I'm actually in commercial. I'm a sales guy. That's the thing. Is like, I'm a sales guy, but I understand production. And I don't want to say I protect the production teams, but certainly when questions come up, it's me backing them up saying, well, no, you can't press a record faster. I bring this, I think, a fan's perspective, really, because to me, this is like the house of treasures, right? Like, look at all this cool shit.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly hard to do this well. And to do it well consistently is another level of extraordinary effort.
And you understand that, having visited all the plants and the printers
Everybody, yeah.
for years and years.
And just talking to people through the process. One of the first people that I talked to when I was at Ryco was Ken Shipley, who you recently had on, which, by the way, I know I mentioned this in socials, but fantastic episode. It was great.
Ken was awesome
to have you guys talk, because I think Ken is one of those guys that he comes at it from this fan perspective that's so deep, and his understanding of it all and his knowledge of it all. I mean, I'm an idiot compared to Ken, Frank. He's one of those cats that like top shelf knowledge base and understanding and how you execute it at a level that is just consistently excellent.
So,
and that is hard.
Yeah.
That's hard to do.
Absolutely. But you really, as you say, you bring that perspective, but not doing production. But there's obviously, for you personally, this deep love of vinyl culture and music.
Absolutely.
And I would imagine physical media and some aspect of collectability. That's something that, like, going far back, were you always into records?
It's interesting. I had a really great record collection, high school into college. Got married rather young and was going to like the third move, and was like, I gotta get rid of these records. So basically since then, I've been buying back all the records that I got rid of. Wasn't a lot, by the way, it was maybe a couple crates, right? But did the dumb thing of like, oh, CD is great. And then I was like, oh, you're an idiot. So, I'm still looking for a few things that I had then, but I've also moved on from a lot of that music too. I don't necessarily need it on a record because my taste has changed as well. I didn't stick at 16 years old and that's all I listened to. I've done a pretty specific and very determined job to like keep your mind open, not just to like ideas and process and like the things that you're challenged by, but music as well.
Well, at Warner, there's so much different music to draw from.
Not just even Warner, but like across the board.
Yeah.
But that's another thing. Like, I'm a really well-informed generalist. If I really break it down, like I know a little bit about a lot of things, but I'm not super deep into anything specific. And that's sort of how I guess I got lucky.
But your day-to-day though, is it a sales role? I mean, marketing, sales, like what is that where
marketing, sales, projection, inventory planning, strategy, like every day.
Yeah. And where would you say the industry is at right now? What are the sales figures right now? How is the year going?
Right now through this week, it's 8 or 9 points up over last year. CDs are down a lot against last year because you just haven't had a big Taylor Swift. You haven't had a lot of K-pop releases, which really drove it last year. There's reasons why it looks like it looks. I think it's down 15 points or so. But inside of that bigger picture, and the overall business, I think, is down 2.4% to this week, right?
The physical.
All the physical business, right?
Yeah.
Looking inside that though, independent retail is up 10 or 12 points. Their vinyl is up 5.5%. Their CDs are up 25%. So there's some really interesting stuff going on inside the greater market that we're all trying to pay attention to because we can see it.
So you get involved in CDs and other physical products?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so what do you think about reaching this next generation of buyers? I mean, there's been a lot of talk about Gen Z, this whole Gen Z report and how they're discovering new music. What are some of the initiatives or strategies that you're using to try to break through and really build this new audience?
Yeah, for us, it really has to do with paying attention to the details around that value, that price value proposition. If we go back just a few years, and it doesn't take long to get there, as an industry, we did a pretty terrible job of retaining the value in the CD format. Like we got it to the point where the greater buying public was like, hey, this isn't worth it, right? I think that really helped Napster become what it was because like, if this didn't look like there was value and it's only value because it's free and I can get whatever I want. How do you win that battle? You really don't. So there's a bit of remembering that. And then as we move forward in what we do, at least as we behave, what we try to do is, hey, where does the market sit in the price conversation? Then how do we make sure that we're not over our skis? How do we make sure that we're keeping that price value proposition really solid for the fan and for the casual consumer, because the vast majority of the people that will buy are casual consumers. The idea of fans being this giant percentage of all of it, true on a case by case individual fan basis of what they buy. But if when you look at like just by head counts, most people that are buying anything are casual. So you got to make sure that it's good and solid, that value proposition. That's part of what we talk about a lot internally. And I think that anybody who's doing this is making sure they're the same thing. Like, I don't think we're doing anything special.
You don't think you breaking down various releases, whether it's a new reissue heritage artist and maybe making different formats or different variants or a deluxe edition for maybe the more engaged fan?
We do that just by the way in which we produce records, though. So we have records that we make for everybody, and those are the records that are the lowest price bucket. And then we like step it up depending on what it is that we're making. And yeah, that does match to variants, packages, reissues, whatever. I see behind you the Black Sabbath Paranoid Deluxe, right? Like there's things that we're doing that bring in, I guess we'll use the term superfan, but it's not my favorite term, but it's one that certainly the industry is using now.
Yeah.
But I think that lots of people can momentarily become that depending on if it's the right artist and the artist that they're most passionate about. I would say that 75% of the Blue Note tone poets that I have purchased over the last 5 or 6 years, I wasn't like, oh my God, I'm gaga for this. But I get the records and I put them on and the price value is there. These are all super valuable to me because of how well they sound, how well they look, the way they behave. There's lots of ways you can slice that cake.
Yeah. So the packaging matters, the
Absolutely.
pressing matters.
All of them matters.
All those details matter.
Every step matters. And I think that's the thing about when you go to make something. It's so easy to screw it all up with one decision. And there's so many decisions involved in it. But you do all this and then you pull it out and it's in just a plain paper sleeve. It's like, that has its place for sure.
Yeah.
Right. But not when you're doing a high-end reissue campaign and you've talked about the mastering and you've got someone special doing it and you've pressed it at a specific plant that is recognized as one of the better ones in the world. And then you're like, what happened? And the difference in cost is what? Like, you're talking about a few pennies. That is not going to be the biggest breaker here.
And so are those conversations though happening at a Warner where you're saying, you know what, we really should put this record in a white polyline sleeve?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would say that for the most part, I can't say this 100%, but I think for the most part, most of our records come in polylines at this point. I think it feels like we've bent to that. And I think a lot of plants will offer that as sort of the package price too,
Yeah.
Because obviously the bigger bulk you get, the more you can use them, the more you make them.
Yeah.
The lower your prices, the more you can actually make it all in one.
For sure. Yeah. We started doing printed polys now.
Yeah. Again, like it's a step up. It's like, it's something else. Well, that's really special, right?
Yeah.
And who wouldn't love that?
Especially in light of, and something I want to talk about, and I know you've been very passionate in leading, is best practices really under the guise of sustainability. So if you're going to make these records, how do you do so in the best way so that people are rewarded and keep these things and play them and they're not fully disposable?
It's impossible to prove this, right? But if you walk into any used record store in America, you're looking at records that were pressed as long ago as the 40s or 50s, pressed one time, the energy was consumed one time, it's still there. Yes, records get into landfill. Yes, records are disposed of in all sorts of terrible ways. I'm sure in the country, someone's tossed them in the air and shooting with a shotgun, lovely large clay pigeons. But when we look at what we do with it now, what we're trying to figure out is how do you ahead of time plan what that end of life could be. So work with plants around, can we send things back for recycling, both in print and in the vinyl itself? Should we be making records on 180 or 140? Lots of people have different opinions. My strong opinion is it doesn't matter the weight. What matters is how you actually did all the work up until you pressed it. How'd you record it? Who cut it? How'd you master? Who did the lacquer cut? Where'd you do the plating? Where'd you press the record, right? Again, lots of people will be like, that guy's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. 180 is the way to go. But when you think about sustainability, it's sort of longer term, add up whatever the number is right now that can be made in the world, 300 million raw vinyl discs, and they're all made of 140 grams instead of 180. Like that is literally, this is a technical term, shit ton of extra material being made that doesn't need to be made, doesn't need to be consumed. I think they all have their place. even when you're talking about weight changes, I think there's actually something to be said around it in specific examples. But I think by and large, there is something that you have to look at from a company standpoint and from a long-term sustainability standpoint. What's the best right decision about this project and the aims of the artist around this project that you can move forward with? That is sort of a unified thought between artist, manager, label, distro, knucklehead.
How do you find a lot of the artists and their management teams engaged in the physical standpoint, and do you get involved in those conversations?
I really don't. I'm sort of happy that I get to occasionally give feedback that gets routed, right? So they'll say, "Hey, we're trying to solve this problem. Can you help us?" Okay, here's my best sort of take on that.
Yeah.
For the most part, it comes to us as, "Hey, we have these options. What do you think?" And so that's usually our interaction. I like to have that level between us, that layer, simply because we are like in the center going to be a bit more to the point, and we'll be less political with ourselves as opposed to what we might need to be with more eyes paying attention. But if I have a conversation with someone, I'm going to be to them like I am to you.
Sure.
Like,
Straight
here's
up.
what I think. This is what it is. Pros, cons. We've got risk. We don't have risk. Whatever it might be.
But you're hearing, I would presume, more managers, artists wanting more sustainable, eco alternatives. I know you have pressed some records, injection molded, using recycled plastics.
Yep. There absolutely are artists that ask for it. We're finding right now presently in the company that it's more of our UK repertoire that's really pushing for it as opposed to US rep. But I think that changes the more ubiquitous it becomes. And right now it is not that. It's just there are so few lines that can make it. We couldn't do some wholesale transfer over. I think it is going to be one of those longer term, slow trajectories that get to a place in the future where it runs alongside. I think the other thing that we all have to be very cognizant of, and certainly we're talking about it as a company, is these cannot be recycled together. So if you're making them with PET injection molding, you're going to have to figure out inside your own supply chain how to keep them separate. Because if we are doing recycling of inventory that is excess inventory, you can't send those all to the same place and just be reground. Because as soon as that gets into the supply chain for making more records, anything with it is ruined. You got terrible sounding records and you'll be like, I don't know why. So there's some things that we have to do as an industry now to make sure that we're paying attention to keeping that separate, keeping it in the proper recycle chain, because you can't mix it.
Well, you're saying it's very limited right now. So here's an opportunity to identify.
I mean,
these
it is.
issues.
I mean, that's what we're doing is like, hey, it's early in the process. Let's make sure that we're getting this down. So yeah, hopefully that's what everyone's
How do you do that then? How do you
it's
recycle?
it's just identifying what it is. I mean, at this point, we have vendors that we can take excess inventory to. They'll do the dink, they'll do the
But they'll
regrind.
do that sort of split streaming.
We're lucky right now because we're so early in the process of making them, and they're all been essentially new releases over the last 18 months. And most of them are selling out because they're variants of a release. So we're not looking at, we have a problem with inventory that we have to deal with. It's more about, let's get a handle on it now moving forward so that isn't a problem in the future.
But you see a path where there's maybe simultaneous releases for a new project on a ejection.
It's already happens for UK releases. We've had records that come out that have individual variants that are injection molding PET and recycled PET alongside traditional PVC of the same.
And they're being marketed as such.
Yeah.
And how are you seeing the sales on those?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head if we're seeing them sell better. I know that the versions that we have done, say in 24, that were produced that way were primarily D2C versions and they've sold out. And that's the nature of D2C too. You're trying to make something that actually goes clean. So it hasn't been something where I could say like, oh, wow, well, we had two versions and one did and one didn't. And this is the contributing reason why.
Yeah.
I think we'd have to do a lot more blind A/B testing and.
But what's it like? I know you listen to a lot of records, as you say, you visit a lot of plants. What's your kind of prognosis, how they sound? And
what I say to everyone is they feel differently. There's a rigidity to them that's different than PVC. It's kind of hard to explain. It's just like, it's not like a wobble like a Dynaflex record, from the 70s, but like a 140 gram record or 180 gram record, they have a feel to it and they have a solidity to them. And the PET records are just, they're stiffer, more rigid. Some of them have a flat edge, which you can really feel. Some of them have more of a rounded edge, which sort of feels like a traditional PVC record. So as far as feel and look, it's like, oh yeah, it's good. Some labels don't look as good, but that has to do with sort of application process and how you refine it.
Some have the UV printing.
Some have the UV
Yep.
printing, which I really like. I really dig the super transparent with the UV printing where you can see through both sides. I think it's just a really, as an effect, I really like it.
Yep.
Sound wise, what I notice is the vast majority of people who listen to records could not tell the difference. If you put two records on in a room and said, hey, we're going to listen to a couple records, they would have no clue if you're playing one or the other. Now, that gets back to, were both records recorded well, mastered well, cut well, played it well, right? Because all that still matters. There's no difference in any of that. That has to all be high quality. But if you do all that, you're not going to tell the difference. That's what I have found. And I've listened to rock records, jazz records, indie folk records, electronic records. I've had a lot of different sort of genre types come through.
Yeah.
I've heard enough to be like, yeah, it comes across. It's not an inferior playback experience, provided all those first steps are done well. I mean, because I've also heard records that are like, that sounds terrible. I don't know that it's the type of material. It's somewhere else, but this result, not good, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard. You can't really call that unless you're privy to all those.
But it's something that Warner is going to continue going down that path.
I think we're super interested in what it means in the end, because when you look at both channels, there's so many arguments pro and con for both, right? And I think that if you look at the present footprint of what the industry is, it is a traditional press PVC industry. And that is not going to change anytime soon. So what can we do to maintain our best sustainability efforts in those lanes as they exist? And then, can we get these plants on all renewable energy? What are all the things you can do to make them even better, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then what can we do to participate in whatever the development is on the technology side to bring us a different, more sustainable product in the future? And I say product as as the music, but as like the actual thing that gets made, and balance those things out to where you're doing the best you can do.
So are you working with plants to really better some of these other processes beyond just the press records? I know you're very involved and instrumental in the Vinyl Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that as one of those areas where there's really common ground, essentially amongst competitors or people in this industry that would otherwise not be working together.
That's the conversation I would have in that avenue, as opposed to as the Warner Music sales guy that's getting involved in production and supply chain and going to plants saying, hey, what are we doing? I think that we have people at corporate that are working on these things, the bigger sort of longer term environmental issues. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, our job is to essentially be there to help support and throw ideas out and be sounding boards and assist in that process. But it's not something that I'm engaged with plants in every day to talk about.
Right. And do you sense that physical media is still important within your company's culture?
As long as I am present, I think I can say yes.
You're a passionate advocate for this format.
Yeah, of course. Our entire team is that way. Even folks that aren't involved in like the selling or the streaming of music, people in the building that are in different departments, people love these physical items. Their eyes light up. It's not just about me being a total dorky fan about the format. It's so much more than that. To be serious, like being a little joke about my involvement and what it actually means. I think that it is a valuable asset for any artist that has the ability to marshal that market. I know I'm sort of playing politics with the statement, but what I mean by that is some music that comes out is not going to ever come out physically. It's just the nature of the timing, the project, the desire of the artist, what they're trying to achieve, etc. And then the opposite is true. Some projects are built all around physical as being this really important component, not just in the short term, but in the long term. So provided that continues to occur with the artists that are coming through our labels and our company, then we're going to be in the space, right? Because we have to be where our artists want us to be. We certainly need to be everywhere a fan is. I think that the idea of you can do this thing and the fans will come to you, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's the way you do anything. It's too hard to reach everyone you can reach in that manner. I think that you have to, as the distributor and as the label, put that music all the places fans may show up. So streaming, sure. Download, go for it. Ringtone, I don't care. Records, CDs, cassettes. If I could make 8-tracks, I don't care. Like, if there's fans and they want to interact with that music, however they want to interact with it, we should just make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're there, right?
Yeah.
And whatever that means. Now, in the future, like in your head chip, whatever, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, are there things that to that point you're working on that
God,
are experimental in the sense like, hey, we never thought we would be marketing or pitching the music on this platform or in this manner?
I think the only thing that has come up that I've found to be super interesting, and I'm seeing us just dabble in a tiny bit, which is the Kit album, which came out of South Korea. And it essentially is what we used to call phygital. So it's physical and digital together. So it's about that big, and you hold it up to your phone and it puts the music on your phone, and you can take the music off and put it back on this and give it to someone else. And then it comes off your phone and goes on theirs. So it's only available whoever has the connection with the Kit album. So it's the artwork on a keychain, and then it's music, but it's more than music. There's also additional content you can grab.
It's like an NFC kind of a thing.
Yeah, it must be, because it connects to the app on your phone based on the physical piece itself. I've seen that a few times.
And this was bonus content that was not available anywhere else.
I'll be honest. Like on those, I don't know what all's on them. I just know that it's the album plus some other things. So it could be music videos, whatever they decide to put on.
Yeah.
But it becomes this collectible because it's a physical manifestation of the album itself, right? Much smaller than a CD, but still a physical manifestation. And it has the digital I'm sure it's a high-res lossless file that syncs to your phone that you can listen to.
But it's a physical, tangible thing.
But it's a physical, tangible thing. It does both.
Yeah. Do you like these vinyl listening bars?
Oh, totally cool. I love it. The whole Kisses from Japan and jazz ones, metal ones, all that. Like, I think it's super cool. Bring people into a room in real life where you're experiencing music together, and there might be some drinks involved or some nice snacks. Like, what is better than that, man? I mean, because, the alternative is you go to a bar that's way too loud. You can't talk to each other. You're yelling in each other's ears. By the time you leave your horse, you got a dry mouth. You've heard nothing but like all night, which for some people, that's cool. Not my bag. But like sit down into a jazz bar and like listen to like great music through a great sound system. Why would anyone not want to do that? But again, I'm specific. Like, I want to do that. Why wouldn't everybody? But that's not how it works.
I'm surprised more smaller plants haven't gone down that route to try to drive some traffic. Not the plants that really are factories, but like this sort of mixture of plants that are really maybe in certain retail potential locations to engage in that.
Yeah, I think that maybe that what you're not seeing them do it maybe on site, but maybe you're seeing them do it like in their locale, right? I think there's a lot of that sort of stuff that goes on that doesn't necessarily rise to the level of knowledge or awareness, I should say.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that is going on. I think that everyone is doing everything they can to make those kind of connections be interweaved into the community they're in, just like record stores do, right? They want to be community hubs for their customers because that's where you establish these relationships that make a difference in your life. And that happens in real life, right? Doing it online's something that's not quite connective.
Were you down at summer camp?
Yeah.
So what was the sentiment with the stores?
Super positive vibe. It was great. Forward thinking, lots of new shops, a lot of new faces that I had not seen in years previous. And that's saying a lot because I've been to all
new shops. So
new shops and new faces in established shops, just like a lot of turnover, a lot of like feel of like, okay, we've got a bunch of younger people coming in and they're excited about it. Established shops opening new locations, established shops expanding locations. It was super positive. It was very cool.
It's great to hear.
It came out of it just like a little energized.
And these are independent, smaller
all
stores.
Independent retail. Some of them are huge. I mean, we had the good folks from Amoeba come out and it was great to have them out and to see them interact with everybody. And I mean, they're sort of a level and a space of their own, but having them involved is also super energizing. It's like, let's get everybody together. The more you can get all these stores talking about their challenges in their individual markets, the more solutions just come up and people are like, oh yeah, I can take that. Oh, I can use that, right?
What were some of the challenges you were hearing from the independent stores?
I mean, gosh, it's everything from staffing to tariff impact that is unreadable to energy costs increasing. I mean, you name it.
But
is
there any sort of concern about increased D2C sort of traction in the business
I
and
think
exclusives and things like this?
that usually comes up as a challenge, yes. Although I can't say that I had any specific conversations while I was at summer camp about that specific topic. Illuminate showed some good numbers that I think their weeks were a bit off of what I just quoted earlier. So they were a couple weeks earlier in the year, but they have it broken out now. So old Illuminate used to have traditional .coms and D2C in one bucket. So internet, mail order, venue, sort of was all in one spot.
Yeah.
So you couldn't really see sort of how each was performing. It was too muddled. In the new Illuminate Connect 2.0, they've actually broken out e-commerce from D2C, so you can see it now. And D2C is about 10% of the market, but consider that that's also new releases. Primarily, it's very heavily driven new release, right? And it's also very quick burns. It's the pre-order window, obviously, but it's week 1, possibly week 2. After that, it all transfers somewhere else. So I'm not saying that stores aren't concerned about it. I think that it behooves all of us on our side of the business to make sure that everyone can participate in the launch of a record. Going back to my comment about we need to be everywhere the fans are. The fans aren't only at the artist website. We might believe that or want that to be the case, but it just isn't. Some fans don't follow email blasts and Instagram posts. Some fans don't know about things unless they go to their independent record store or walk into a Target or shop on Amazon. There's lots of ways in which music fans find out what is out, right?
Yeah.
So I think that if you make it available to everybody and let everybody compete, you're going to end up having a better result anyway. But the big concern from independent retail at this point is not having that ability to compete. Like if they're being embargoed by a week or 2 weeks or entirely, right? There are records that have come out in the last few years that have never been available to anybody except the D2C platform. And that's a strategy. I would argue against it very aggressively because I don't think that's the way that you reach everyone. And if your desire is to reach everyone that you can reach, you got to be in more places than just your platform. Again, this is opinion, right?
Well, it's an opinion formed by many years of
Sure. Yeah. But, at the same time, I'm sure there are plenty of people that could watch this and be like, that guy's an idiot, which I totally understand. Like, you're right. Like, I don't know what I don't know. I know I don't know a lot.
You know a lot, Billy.
Well, no, I appreciate that. But, it's still like, I got to be humble about how much I don't know, right?
Sure.
Because I'm not in those conversations with an artist and their manager and saying like, hey, here's what our goal is and here's what we want to achieve. And we think this is the best way to do it. Can't argue with that. I could certainly say like, oh, cool. Well, what about if we did this, this, and this, and maybe it all works too, right? So it just depends on, think what Lin-Manuel Miranda, like, I want to be in the room where it happens. Give me in a room where these decisions are being discussed and made, and maybe I can like make that case and say, maybe we could do this a different way.
Yeah.
But I always think the more people that are amplifying the message, the more outlets that are doing that, by default, we will reach more people. And that's the goal. The goal is to reach as many people as we can.
Yeah. So on that note, where do you see the vinyl industry going? Every year, everyone says, can it go higher? Had a little dip, but recently it seems to picked up, certainly from our perspective.
What's interesting is that the dip was really only on the production side, right?
Not on the sales.
No, sales have been positive. We're in the 19th straight year of growth. And again, Illuminate made changes around how they modeled independent retail that really made 24 hard to measure. We can now measure it very accurately. We do presently have the most accurate measurement of the independent market in the US we've had in my time in the business, which is from 86 to now. So like we're in the best place we can be in. They're outperforming the general market by on LP 5 or 6 points, on CD like 30 points. They're doing better than the general market. So there's something happening in those stores that is positive. And I think that provided that environment is supported enough so that they can continue to thrive, grow more locations, newer shops, newer ways of looking at the business, I don't see any reason why any of this changes. Obviously, always things you can do to screw it up. Like that value proposition is still very important. And I think that people have to really pay attention to that. But provided we do a decent enough job of that, I mean, it's here. It's the surviving physical format. It's the leading physical format. now in the US and the UK for multiple years. Like, CDs will come back more than they are, but I think that vinyl ends up remaining the sort of like, this is it. And the thing is, like, after this, what comes after streaming as the new thing? I don't know the answer to this, right? But I'd made a joke like, it's an implant, maybe. It's furniture that is also a speaker, and you can just talk to your couch and, yeah, I feel like this, and it plays. I have no idea, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be something that comes along after it. So maybe new players in the space that dislodge the players that are leading now. And that changes economics of payout, or who knows, right? It's wild because we're getting close to now 20 years of this, right? 19 straight years of growth. That also means that for 19 years, we've done a really great job of making the used records of the future. So like, we also continued that piece because it is a synergistic, interwoven process, new plus used, right? So we just, for people that are 15 right now today that haven't yet figured this out and find records in the next 5 years and think, well, I want that record from 2010. That's 20 years ago. It's a lifetime, man. It's a kid growing all the way up into college, right? So we just gave them 20 plus years of fantastic records they can go and find in the used bins, along with whatever we're making for them in the future. That seems pretty solid to me.
That seems pretty good. That's a great way to end the conversation.
Okay.
I think so. Unless there's some pet peeves you want to get off your shoulder, or any gripes, or
no.
That was a very positive final message.
Great. We'll go back and edit and we'll cut it right there.
Very good. Well, Billy, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate
it. Thank you so much.
It's fun coming down.